What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with some more news. Join us now as we look at the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including WWE re-signed Samoa Joe, Brock Lesnar saved a wrestler's life, bad news for ticket sales in the WWE, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Now let's hit the intro and get straight into our first story. Now, first story looks at WWE struggling to sell tickets. Now, today's top story concerns the WWE's difficulty selling tickets for its live events. The WWE is returning to live events with fans, but there are reports that ticket sales are less than ideal. Meltzer recently commented on the Wrestling Observer Radio that there's a lot of events under 2,000 tickets sold, a lot of shows. When it comes to the head-to-heads with AEW, they're both running the Dallas market. WWE is ahead of them on that one, but they're also in the American Airlines Center and AEW is in a building in Garland, so it's really not fair to compare. Meltzer elaborated further on WWE versus AEW sales figures, saying, Jacksonville is in AEW's home market, so WWE has not sold many tickets for the Jacksonville show. AEW doesn't sell a lot of tickets anymore either for television tapings. Miami, AEW's ahead, and Charlotte, AEW's ahead of them. Charlotte's a big surprise because those in Carolina markets, WWE is way ahead in those traditional wrestling markets, but AEW is ahead. You may recall that the WWE experienced sluggish ticket sales prior to the pandemic, with pay-per-views, Raw and SmackDown shows often featuring awful attendance numbers and house shows drawing even less. At one point there was talk of the WWE dropping its house shows as they weren't drawing ticket revenue. Meltzer also tweeted on the situation saying, just got all the WWE advances through June 9th. Chicago is fine, a few others are okay, but the old Vince would look at these numbers because I've seen this many times and shoot big angles with new characters on Monday. Will this Vince? No idea. Meltzer added, the old Vince didn't listen to excuses when tickets weren't moving and when the ticket sales were the ultimate truth of the product. Meltzer's remarks on the old Vince raise an important point. Are ticket sales the ultimate truth of the product, or have they been replaced by something else, such as pay-per-view numbers or TV ratings? Once upon a time, pay-per-view was a major source of revenue, but we feel the WWE's major source of income is its rights fees for SmackDown, NXT, and Raw, along with its licensing the streaming rights to the WWE Network to the Peacock streaming service. Nevertheless, ticket sales do reflect an interest or lack of interest in the product, but how much stock should Vince McMahon put in them? At this point, it's difficult to say if the lack of ticket sales is due to people still having reservations about attending live events, people still dealing with COVID-related economic difficulties, or a genuine lack of interest in the product. If it is due to a lack of interest in the product, what will Vince McMahon do to bring the fans back in? At the same time, how will a potentially poor attendance rate affect the WWE's financial status? The company brought in record profits during the pandemic, but if the cost of running shows isn't offset by sufficient ticket revenue, they could lose money and, worse, be perceived as a product that has less appeal than previously believed. Might the stock devalue, and if it did, might the reduced attendance affect negotiations when Raw and SmackDown's broadcast rights go up for sale? Now, we aren't saying these initial figures should be seen as a calamity, but it's worth keeping an eye on both for AEW and the WWE. Next up, WWE Rehires Samoa Joe. Now, we've all heard the saying, one door closes while another one opens, and that seems to be the case with Samoa Joe, who was released from the WWE on 15th April, but now has been re-signed by the WWE. Dave Meltzer recently reported on the Wrestling Observer Radio that Samoa Joe is back and headed to NXT, which looks like it's just in time as current NXT General Manager William Regal might be leaving. In case you missed last night's NXT takeover in your house, William Regal hinted at the end of the show that he's stepping down due to the complete chaos that occurred throughout the show, which could lead to the perfect opportunity for the Samoan submission machine. So I think that's the cue for Samoa Joe. I don't know that 100%. I was told today that Samoa Joe is in a Regal-like role, and all of a sudden Regal is talking like he's stepping down. So maybe the Regal-like role is Regal's role. But if he's leaving, based on what I was told, Samoa Joe is definitely the favorite to be the new commissioner. And what's particularly interesting about the potential situation is that Joe would be involved in an apparent non-wrestling role. Meltzer observed, Joe is in, and he's in as a non-wrestler, so I think that tells you that he's not cleared. So even if he went to another company, if he's not medically cleared, it's just what it is. He's taking a job in NXT and he's doing something there, and he may be the new authority figure on television, or may not be, but he's gonna be behind the scenes. If Joe isn't able to wrestle, the authority role makes sense as it's unclear what other promotions would be interested in him unless he wrestles. While Joe proved to be an excellent color commentator, there might not have been any company willing to meet Samoa Joe's salary requirements. Regardless of the salary concerns, PW Insider's Mike Johnson reports that Triple H moved heaven and earth to get Joe back on the black and gold roster. PWInsider.com is told that Triple H snatched him back as soon as possible. One source told PWInsider.com that the second a decision by others to let Joe back on board, Triple H was not happy and wanted him back in NXT as opposed to being elsewhere outside of WWE's auspices. According to Johnson, Joe has always been one of the game's favorites. In fact, Triple H was the point person responsible who initially brought Joe into WWE in 2015 for NXT, and at one point had even given him a pretty unique deal where he was able to continue working independent dates, although that later evolved into a more traditional deal. The game is undoubtedly thrilled to have Joe back, and it will be interesting to see what type of dynamic he creates as NXT General Manager. Next up, the WWE working on Rock vs Roman for WrestleMania 38. Could wrestling fans finally get to see a showdown between The Rock and Roman Reigns? While there's been talk of WrestleMania hosting a dream match between The Rock and Roman Reigns for years, it has yet to materialize. However, a recent report from Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer Radio suggests it could happen as early as next year. Obviously, The Rock and Roman Reigns is something that they're building towards, and it would be. Every year gets tougher and tougher because Dwayne gets a year older, and but I think he really wants to do a match against Roman Reigns. I think for sure it'll be the next 2 WrestleManias, and if he can pull it off, the next WrestleMania. There's never been a better time for the Clash of Titans, as Roman Reigns' heel act has taken his career to new heights, and The Rock's mainstream popularity has never been greater. As always, the logistics of getting the most electrifying man in sports entertainment into the ring in between his many Hollywood projects is the real challenge. Sadly, this is the type of match where fans shouldn't get their expectations up until it's officially booked, and even then, well, when the bell rings. Next up, the time Brock Lesnar saved a wrestler's life. Brock Lesnar may be known for destroying opponents in the ring and the octagon, but did you know that the Beast Incarnate once saved another wrestler's life? Back in 2003, Zach Gowen made an impressive debut in the WWE as the high-flying superstar put on some impressive matches despite only having one leg. The WWE ran an angle where Gowen was bullied by Mr. McMahon, including one situation where Vinnie Mac put Gowen into a match against Lesnar. Zach Gowen spoke about the match while on the Rewind Recap Relive podcast, explaining how things took a turn for the worse. He was supposed to give me 3 powerbombs, like a triple powerbomb where you're on hold, and then after 2, he felt I got knocked out. He felt my body go limp for a second. I hit the back of my head on the mat. I was knocked out on the powerbomb. It was supposed to be 3, but he felt that I was in danger, so he just let go of me. He might have saved my life if we're being 100% honest at that point. A Gowen's story is a reminder that a wrestler's safety depends not only on his performance, but that of his opponent, and when you're in the hands of a monster like Lesnar, there's no room for error. This story is all the more striking when you consider Lesnar had just debuted on the main roster the year before. And finally, DX makes a surprise appearance at In Your House. And last but not least, you never know who will show up at the In Your House event, and the 2021 edition of NXT TakeOver In Your House was no exception, as those crazy kids from DX showed up before the show started, welcoming the fans to the Capitol Wrestling Center. Triple H and Shawn Michaels did their DX stick, providing the fans with a healthy dose of nostalgia before letting the future superstars of tomorrow do what they do best. If you watched last year's In Your House, you'll remember the backstage segment where the Heartbreak Kid and the Game, along with the Road Dogg, struggled to log on to AOL chat. Well, you had to be born in the 90s for that one. But there you have it, guys, the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know. Be sure to leave your comments down below. I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.